Welcome to the LTC podcast, where we bring people from across the industry together to talk about what really makes the hospitality industry shine: the people. We will offer insights, guidance, and best practices when it comes to caring for the licensed hospitality workforce. In each episode, we'll be sitting down with someone from the industry or an expert in their field. We're diving into the real stuff, the challenges, the triumphs, and everything in between, to figure out how we can make our workplace better and happier for everyone. Our mission, it's pretty simple. We want to make sure that those of us in hospitality aren't just serving others, but also taking great care of ourselves and our colleagues. Hi both, thanks so much for joining us today. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yep, I'm Greg Bateman and I'm brewing positivity at People's Captain.
And I'm Jolanta Strong and I'm head of the charity services at the Licensed Trade Charity.
Amazing. Could you tell us a little bit more about the LTC and what they do?
Sure. So Licensed Trade Charity, we've got 24/7 helpline and we provide emotional support, specialist advice and financial grants to everyone who is currently or have in the past worked in the licensed drinks industry.
Amazing. And same question to Greg.
People's Captain is a mission company that makes award-winning craft beer, not a beer company with a bit of a mission. We're on a mission to brew positivity. By that, we mean getting people where they are, enjoying social occasions with their friends, encouraging them to start good conversations and raising money for mental health initiatives at the same time.
Amazing. So we have met previously. John Dale from Punch introduced us, and you from conversations that we've had are super kind of into looking at mental health and specifically in the hospitality industry. Do you have a background? What has you so passionate about mental health?
Yeah, the passion for mental health is from my own personal experience. I was a professional rugby player until just over a year ago, and I hit the ringer while I was still playing. A pint with my best mate saved my life, probably, because it's actually what got me talking and got me on the path to getting help that I needed. Hospitality industry, I think, is twofold. Is obviously we produce beer, but equally, it's often one of the safest places that people feel most comfortable to go and have conversations with their friends, as in a pub, bar, restaurant, cafe. So it's exactly the kind of space that we want to be turning up in and being a force for good.
And can you, if we think about when people, when businesses, when leaders prioritise mental health in their teams, what happens?
There's two ways of looking at this, right? We can look at it through a lens of, what we put into what we get out, and the evidence shows that the more psychologically safe people are, the higher performance you'll get out of them in their work. But there's also the other angle of it's just the right thing to do, and I think that we can get very carried away with trying to find a really tangible commercial benefit of why we should be good people and do the right thing by people. But equally, I think on the other side of that same coin, why wouldn't you want to run a company with well psychologically safe, guarded people that feel comfortable enough to express themselves so that they can perform at their optimum rather than because of?
Yeah, and do you think then organisations tend to overthink ways in which to look at mental health with employees, as in, thinking about these grand, initiatives, kind of classroom style, programs, and it almost becomes quite daunting then, and people just genuinely don't know where to start, and it might feel like you could potentially be opening a can of worms.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some truth to that, and I don't know necessarily whether one's better than the other or more important than the other. But I think that through the best will in the world, because mental health is much more on everybody's radars, people want to make a difference about it, particularly companies in hospitality. That's why we're here. But I do think that what often people struggle with is very intense days of, this is a well-being day. We're going to start with where I've come from, what my feelings are, all of that stuff. It took me months in therapy to work out what I was feeling or how I was getting to where I was getting to, and then, you know, how I was working with that person to be able to do something about it. So I think the expectation level of what we think people are prepared to share and get involved in as stopgap initiatives does need to be addressed. But I think, you know, mental health is, you know, effectively on a pyramid: social, psychological, biological. Psychological, talking therapy, CBT; biological, need medicated intervention, or, you know, neurological disorder. The social stuff is this kind of stuff: communities and how we connect with other people, connect with the outdoors, how we find a sense of belonging and purpose and a positive outlook on the future. And I think that what often happens is we spend a lot of time kind of jumping up into the pyramid and trying to diagnose people, or trying to, because people really care, try and come up with answers or programs or initiatives and stuff. Or actually, if we built, you know, better ecosystems where people felt like they had a sense of connection and purpose to their work, they'd probably feel quite a bit better anyway. And that, you know, having good mental fitness and resilience doesn't mean you don't have bad days. It means that you're equipped to be able to deal with them, if that makes sense. Sorry, very long answer to your question.
That was a beautiful answer, actually, and it makes perfect sense what you said. What I really love about your kind of ethos and where you come from is that you talk about mental health in a very, very simple terms. Social interactions, let's talk to people, and just simply it's the right thing to do. Yes, you mentioned therapy and different kinds of therapies, but it's very much, you know, if you start here, it does very quickly become overwhelming, and then people think they perhaps need to have special qualifications to talk about mental health, or maybe they overthink and they don't want to say things in case they say a wrong thing, or maybe they are worried about, I don't know, triggering people. And actually, we don't have to start here. We can just start at this kind of, you know, very basic day-to-day, just being a decent human. Let's have a chat.
Well, I think, yeah, great analogy. And actually, I would almost much prefer that people got a lot better at listening than they did at talking. If we improved listening skills, we would be far better equipped to be able to deal with what is effectively a mental health crisis in this country than we would, you know, getting people to talk more. Because there are so many signs on the way to somebody that's really struggling. And if you don't know what to listen for, or you're not capable of listening properly, you know, we all think we're good listeners, but, you know, unless you're actively listening and you're listening for clues and cues, it can become very difficult. So I do think that there's a tweak in that narrative that is, because it's easy to say, let's just talk to each other more. But actually, you know, one of the really common things that takes place is you'll tell me how you feel, and I'll say, I know exactly how you feel, because I'm trying to empathize with you and I'm trying to make you feel like you're not on your own. But actually, I have no idea what you feel like, because I've got no idea how you're coping with it and all the rest of it. And actually, the, you know, correct response would be something like, tell me more. You know, what does that feel like? And let you tell me what you feel like, rather than me assuming that I know it all. So I think that the listening skills are far more important, or I would prefer listening skills to be prioritized as opposed to talking skills.
So me and Kelly, we share office on the rare occasion when we are both in the office. So we've got a team of caseworkers who talk with people who apply to us for financial support. We rarely take phone calls ourselves, but both me and Kelly overhear our caseworkers talking to applicants. And the best conversations are the ones when you hear the caseworker not saying very much at all, because that's giving a platform to the person on the other end of the phone to actually talk through openly and freely about what it is that they're going through. And it's very much, you know, just being there saying, I hear you, it's okay, I'm listening, what happened next, how did that make you feel, and so on. And when you know, on the other hand, when you hear caseworkers kind of, you know, trying to prompt and asking loads of questions, you know that the other person is kind of closed off and not comfortable sharing. So yeah, listening skills, that is spot on, Greg, definitely.
And in terms of, then if we were to look at like a venue, let's say, and you've got potentially a GM with a team, like, do you have any kind of like practical tips that you could say, like how do you like listen to your team while also trying to run a venue, right? Like, it's kind of, it's work. You want your team to be as happy as they can be at work, and you want to try and support them. So what would you say to somebody who's running a venue and also trying to manage a team?
Yeah, I try really hard to not give advice,
Okay.
but particularly, quick tip advice, because I do think that we live in a world of, quick solutions to things, magic bullets. I'm still waiting for the last fad diet to work for me, or you know what I mean? So I do think that it is. I'm going to say irresponsible, but maybe that's a bit strong to just give some quick tips. But I do think that, if you think about a GM's job, it's twofold, right? Is you've got the running of the venue, as in, running that business, and you've got the inspiring and leading a team. And then all of those people in that team are looking for leadership, inspiration, guidance, and the clarity of their role. They need a sense of purpose and belonging to what they're trying to do. They need to feel like they're valued. And I think that on every interaction that you have with somebody, verbal, non-verbal, physical, non-physical, is an opportunity to drill into the things that will make people feel more purposeful, more belonged, part of something, if belong's not a word. So I think it's, that's what I was talking about earlier about the sort of social level. There's loads more of those opportunities than there are the opportunity to take everybody out of a business for a day and go on a wellbeing retreat together and talk about how we feel. And I suppose the other, so that's kind of one thought. Yeah. And I think the other thing that sort of instantly came to mind was this idea around, how do I put this, that you have an opportunity and a responsibility. So like we were talking about, it's the right thing to do, but you also have an opportunity to set people up for their own emotional health in the future. And I just think that if you take those small opportunities that come regularly, but also understanding that you need to be equipped to be able to go and do that and be able to listen and have the skills, it's tough, right? Hospitality is a really tough industry to work in, but people get so much out of it.
Yeah, I think it's...
That was a really, meta answer to your question, but it's because I don't want to say, 3 things.
Yeah.
Start the day with, this. Actually, there is a very quick thing that people can do, is that starting the day with gratitude has shown a massive reduction in anxiety. So if you want a quick answer, then starting the day with a 15 minutes of gratitude has been proven to reduce anxiety considerably. Sorry, I did have a quick answer actually after all that.
That's really good. And that's, I think it's having those kind of like insights, people, we know we should, practicing gratitude is good, but actually, that reminder that if you do this, then it can have a positive impact. And, telling team members as well, if they're struggling, having something to say, I'm listening, but have you tried this? It could be worth a shot, is really good. But I like what you're saying about the kind of everyday social interactions and how in those moments there's your opportunity to kind of pick things up and look for kind of clues as to see if somebody's behavior is like changing, or and watching out for those rather than like you said, going on those kind of wellness sessions. I think that in itself is just something like to bear in mind if you are kind of in a team, managing a team. It doesn't really matter who you are within the organisation. Everybody almost has a responsibility to look out for each other and ourselves as well.
Yeah, dead right. And I think that as you were talking there, I was thinking around that it's almost the question that we were talking about before about the intensity of a wellness day or something, right? Is and unfortunately where a lot of the mental health narrative has sort of ended up is kind of on this big stuff, the wellbeing days, the yoga after work, the this, the that and the other. But actually, if you talk to any youth worker, how they get kids to open up to them, they do it over a game of pool or play PlayStation with them, or as social creatures, we're much better at opening up while we're doing something else because we're not, as mentally burdened with what we're trying to share. And I think that was the other bit that came to mind earlier was we've got to remember that we're starting from a really low skill base in understanding how we feel and how to talk about it, because I was never taught about this stuff at school, and that's why I'm so passionate about it and why at People's Captain we are trying to do something about it and develop skills, because at great behest people tried to teach me about Pythagoras, which I still haven't used to this day. What would have been really helpful would have been somebody explaining to me these are what emotions are, and this is where you might feel them, or these are skills that you're going to need to learn to build your self-esteem, your resilience, all the rest of it as you go through adult life. And as two people working in the space that you do, it would be interesting to know, do you feel equipped with those skills to, know how you're feeling, and then think about that to a GM that's really busy and is worrying if the cleaner's turned up and so-and-so hasn't turned up for their shift and all the rest of it. It can be a really big ask, and I think that's what we were talking about at the beginning, is we're asking people to go in at level 7. We haven't done level 1 yet, so I think there needs to be a bit of a reality check on some of this stuff that's, especially with a term like mental health, it's so broad that, you automatically think of a black and white picture, someone with their head in their hands in the corner of a dark room. But there's the whole positive side of it, and we can definitely change that narrative around, the skills that you need to develop to be mentally fit, rather than just, I'm having a mental health day.
I just think as you were talking there, and as you asked the question, do you think, if I was to put myself in a work situation and if I saw that somebody, or if somebody said that they were, struggling, I think I would find that difficult. I would, try my hardest to be there for somebody, have conversations. But what I think is really interesting is last week I had a conversation with my son, who is 9, and he came to me speaking about mental health. They had done a topic in school.
So they are doing it.
They are doing it. And he was telling me all this wonderful stuff, and I stopped and me and his dad were like, this is amazing. He's just coming and spouting off this, we all need to look after each other and we need to look out for our friends. And I said to Jamie, I said, what's really funny, what's not funny, when I was your age, I wouldn't have known what mental health was. And he was like, how do you mean? And he was like, he just found it so bizarre that we didn't learn about it in school. We weren't taught, if you were ill, it was a physical thing, right? And that's kind of where the line was drawn, and it went no further than that. So I think, in a work, if you're dealing with somebody who may be at work who hasn't been through it before, it can be quite difficult. But if I think about if I was to deal with a kind of mental health scenario with my children, because they have been given the tools, they already are so far ahead of where I am and where potentially work colleagues might be, because they have started with the very, very basics from when they're quite young. So it's more normalised for these kids growing up than it is for people like our age. And I think those conversations with the younger generation, they'll be more frequent, they'll be more apparent, there'll be less secrecy around it. like zero shame around it. You know, I think that conversation is really open. Whereas, you know, for us, where, you know, it's now we're speaking about it, but previously it just wasn't spoken about, that those conversations are probably a little bit harder to have.
Yeah.
Things are changing, and they're changing fast. I've started with the charity 7 years ago, and we've always had helpline, and we've always offered emotional support and counselling. 7 years ago, only about 30% of the phone calls coming to our helpline were about kind of, well, we say mental health. It was basically emotional well-being, and 70% was about practical practical questions, advice, money worries. And the split is now 50-50. So things are changing, things are moving. And loads of companies, loads of pubcos are really, really, they are there with talking about it, encouraging people to be more open, and kind of cultivating that psychological safety culture that you've mentioned, Greg. So things are changing, and it's lovely to see. The other thing I wanted to mention is again about simple things and about fundamentally just being kind. When we do what we do, delivering services that a licensed trade charity does, including financial support, when people come back to us to give us feedback, it's really interesting. I always find it fascinating that they don't mention about however many £100 they were given. What is important to those people is that they were listened to. They were given time, they were given platform to be believed in, not to be judged. And they often said, you were kind to me. And that means so much, because that opens a whole kind of sea of possibilities, because, we're touching things like self-esteem and resilience, and actually people have this kind of good, solid starting point to actually see their situation in a different light, in a different perspective.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a question there, but I think there's a couple of things that I found interesting. Is that we also need to be careful, and I don't want to be, controversial and, say this isn't a problem, but we do need to be careful about, labelling too many things as mental health, because there's lots of things that are symptom caused that create, anxiety. So the last 18 months, lots of pubs have been really worried about interest rate rises, and financial stress and stress and anxiety are definitely, things we need to look out for in mental health as a sphere. But we need to be careful that we don't suddenly then put lots of people with symptoms of practical things that can be solved, which is why the work that you guys do is so important. Because, if you talk to somebody and they're like, do you know, I'm just really worried because I'm in loads of debt and I can't pay my mortgage this month. Yeah, I'm not saying everybody could do it, but if you just solve that problem for them, then they're not stressed and anxious anymore. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that it's, and I'm trying to get this point across, and hopefully this isn't too drawn out, and so stop me if it is, but I'm trying to get this point across as a real positive, because there's so much we can do to help, and a lot of it is, things that happen, or that is symptoms of something that's stressful, and like life's tough, right? I mean, the last few years has been pretty tough, and we've got the clowns in down the road. We'd probably actually better edit that out in case there's any pub goes that are particularly fond on this lot. But I think I'm just trying to get it across that there is stuff we can do, and unfortunately, funding's tight, money's tight. There's only so much to go around. But I think if we had a more holistic view of this, rather than oh my goodness, you're really anxious and stressed and whatever, if there's actually something that we can do, that would be great. Let's fix some problems. But I really hope that that's heard in the way that it's meant, as opposed to contradicting everything that I've just said before.
No, and I think it's
Absolutely
really
not.
like apt in terms of like what we do as well. So, you know, we are here to support people financially, practically and emotionally. And quite often, I mean, you know better than anyone, but, you know, we get calls and somebody's worried, anxious, like you said, and then, you know, you kind of do a little bit of digging around. You might send out a volunteer and you realise they don't have a fridge. You know, they need some help until they reach their first payday with some grocery vouchers. The kids need bed, the kids need uniform, and that's what the LTC does. So we, you know, you guys, it's Charity Services, will look at somebody's situation, figure out what they need to get themselves back on their feet. So you give them that chance, and then, you know, you put them in the best situation that you can by helping with those things that are being really stressful and causing anxiety. But in the knowledge then that from once they have that help and you've kind of solved those issues, that they are then in a better place to go out and kind of, you know, make their lives a little bit
And
better.
that's why I really like how our helpline works, because fundamentally what stress is a natural and healthy reaction to external environment, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, because you know, a healthy element of stress helps us to deal with that situation. So that's kind of starting point. And how our helpline works is when people call us and talk to us about their problems or their issues or what it is that they're worried about, it doesn't work on the principle of, you know, you making that phone call and saying, I would like to access 6 sessions of counselling, please. We will be professionally curious, we will ask certain questions, and we will say, you know, perhaps with your housing issue or with your money issue, budgeting issue, or if you've got some debts, or if you're not sure how to sort out your childcare, or if you're stressed because you've got elderly parents that need looking after, speak to our information specialists first. They will give you certain information, certain bits of advice that can make a situation more manageable. Then come back and talk to us again. Our counsellors will then ask a set of questions. They will do kind of behind the scenes assessment before actually coming to a conclusion together with the caller if the counselling is actually needed in that situation. And even when it comes to financial issues, we don't jump into conclusions quickly. Okay, let's give this person £1,500 and that will sort out their problems. We ask those questions because we don't want to create a situation when we make someone financially reliant on us. We want to look at the kind of root of the problem and work with the people to kind of give them a fresh start, but also give them tools and ability to get themselves, to build themselves back up so that they manage from month to month going forward.
Yeah, I think that's what I really like since joining the LTC is every person who comes to the charity, their scenario is looked at on an individual basis. It's not, you know, tick the box, you know, they're falling into this category, this is the support that we need. I think that's so important because everyone's situation is different. And, you know, when you say you're professionally curious, I've seen by being on the other side of those calls that leads to finding out more about people. So I think it comes back nicely to listening, and then if somebody's, you know, telling you something, having those like open-ended questions that is, well, tell me a little bit more about that, how does that make you feel, and by, you know, being there and listening to somebody and being a little bit curious kind of enables people to open up a little bit more. So you spoke a little bit about kind of our mental fitness skills. You know, do you have, like, how do we kind of work on that as like individuals, and, you know, not necessarily just in the work environment?
Yeah, so this is a little bit academic, so bear with me, but there's effectively 9 mental fitness skills that we can learn, improve, and, you know, become part of our skill set, our tool set to help us deal with the stuff that life throws at us. They are, because I can't remember them all right now and I've been put on the spot, things like self-esteem, resilience, communicating, like those skills are things that it is documented, evidence-based. You can improve at having more self-esteem. You can improve at being more resilient. There is well put together training and exercises, individually, team, company-wide, that you can do that do make a difference on those skills. And what those skills do help not only prevent mental health decline, but remember I was talking about the narrative around mental health. It helps us move forward into a more positive narrative of, you know, being able to push on in a more positive light, right? Because I've been very public about my experiences since I had them, for, you know, because I wanted to encourage other people that, you know, it was okay, because I felt like the only person in the world that had struggled with this stuff until I realised that actually this is quite a big issue. I'm not sure if you're aware, and I've been doing this a while, and you know, regularly talk to pub groups. We have People's Captain has programs that we do with pub groups. I'll talk more about that in a bit. Various other companies get asked to speak on it, and I just think that we need to start talking about it in a much more positive prevention into improving life, work, home, rather than I've got to tick this box because Kaylee's going to give me a hard time because work have put this wellbeing day on, and I've got to build a raft with Steve, and he's a nightmare. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like, and you know, that's, you know, people can learn that stuff, and you know, happy to share some of that information afterwards on their own. But it's so much more powerful when you do it as a team, and even more powerful if you do it as a company. And it's like a company initiative that's encouraged from you know, corporate culture into team dynamic into individual work that people do. You know, some people, this is something that they really want to work on, and other people, it's just not on their radar yet. That's absolutely fine.
It's essentially kind of retraining your brain, isn't it? Because we all have certain thinking traps, certain habits of thinking, and it's kind of putting them on a different route, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't like to answer that for definite because I'm not a psychologist, but I definitely think that there's a lot of opportunity to think about this differently, and the more you think about something differently, the more it, you know, becomes a habit, and once something's a habit, it's hard to break, right? Good and bad.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about then the initiatives that the People's Captain that you guys offer?
For sure. So I suppose on a you know, we kind of cover it in three levels, as I was talking about: company, team, individual. And that's part of our ESG partnership, where, you know, we're one of their ESG partners, where, yes, you think about that, an individual in a pub is mental health first aid trained for their team and their community. But then when you think about what that impact that has on the wider community outside the pub and the safe places for people, and it's really forward thinking from someone like Punch. You know, that, let's be honest, they don't have to do it, do they? I'm not sure. You know, that it was, you know, top of the agenda of companies like this, you know, 10 years ago, but they've got super forward thinking board there that want to make an impact. And then on a team level, we have workshops that we run. So one of my favorites that we run is called Ask Better rather than Ask Twice, because the Ask Twice movement was great, but there's no reason for somebody to give you a better answer. You know, the old, how are you? Yeah, good. How are you really? I told you I'm good. Like that, back to this whole intensity thing. So these two guys that I met during my rugby days that are ex-military. I'm not allowed to tell you what department they worked in, but they're really good at having difficult conversations. And we basically do a beer tasting, but then with them and People's Captain, we go through how to listen to people and how to basically go through a facilitation funnel. So start with broad, end up in narrow questions. So tell me more about your day, tell me this, explain to me this, describe to me, use the listening wheel, but to get people talking more. So that's one of my favourite workshops that we do. We also have mental health awareness days that we do. But to be honest, I'm pretty sort of vigilant that I don't like just doing it without doing, general stuff first. And I think that the best conversations I've had with pub groups have been where I've gone and done sessions like Ask Better, but I've ended up there all afternoon talking to Stefano, who's come over from Italy, and he's telling me about the social expectations, but it's because we've got a beer in our hands, and he's just talking, and we're opening up. So it's much more sort of boots on the ground workshop stuff with teams, and then on an individual basis, we to cover all three of these actually, but we do have a software that is available to some of our pub groups where they can adopt that into their team meetings. So they can start team meetings with 5 minutes of gratitude, 5 minutes of listening skills, whatever the program that they've chosen to go on will do. The team can then have those different exercises or whatever that their team might need to work on as a team. I think we need to be a little bit more resilient because it's tough. It's coming up to Christmas and Greg's forgotten to do the Christmas plan again. Like, come on, let's, do some exercises. And that app also allows people to work on the emotional fitness mental fitness skills on an individual level as well.
I love that, like when it's like a team thing as well, and it kind of takes the focus then off individuals, and I feel like that approach makes it, easier for everybody when you're looking at it as a group. Yeah,
and I agree, but that's how you think about it.
Yeah.
And actually, for some people it'd be a nightmare doing something like that in a team.
Yeah.
Oh, please don't ask me to do 5 minutes of gratitude at the beginning of this call. I hate John that's on this call. I'm not grateful that John's on this. Not that John, if you're listening. But that's why having the ability to dial that up and dial that down is super important. And to be super transparent, we're pretty small, right? We're just getting going, but we're trying to make some pretty big strides in this space, and the beer helps fund some of this stuff that we do. But we're also trying to donate to charities at the same time. So, it's a difficult balance, but I'd like to think that as a company, nobody can do this better than we can. Nobody can, have the authenticity and the, desire to really make a difference like we do.
And the beer tasting, because I bet like people's ears will have like pricked up when you hear that. That just sounds like such a great approach. Like you said, people are willing to open up when you're doing something else. So that, and it's very apt, majority I'm being very prejudiced now, but, like a beer tasting, like it fits in well with the industry. What's your capacity if somebody wanted to kind of reach out?
Yeah, it's £250,000 for the
yeah it's really great.
Yeah. No, it's it's something that we've run a dozen times, there's me and a couple of guys that do that, and it's those sorts of things you can get carried away with and, try and scale that up super quick. But we're so focused on doing this right and so focused on, really landing with an impact. But, when we can do a group of up to, 50, 100 people, like you split people up into teams and change them around on their tables. And honestly, it's like, if there was awards for workshops, it would be up there, having been on some pretty shocking ones in my time. But yeah, it's very much a really nice place to start for pubcos because, it's talking about the software that I was talking about before. Like, it's quite a thing to wrap that into, you know, a really big organisation. Lots of places already have their own consoles with their own content and their own good stuff on it. And, you know, we provide content for those things as and when, you know, asked or required or whatever. Whereas, you know, we're just going to do something a bit different. You're going to listen to two ex-military blokes, an ex-rugby bloke. We're going to have a beer tasting, and we're going to get a bit better at listening. How does that sound? Pardon? You know, there was a joke in that.
No, I think it sounds great.
You're not a trainer, basically. You're someone very relatable. I think that makes a big difference.
Do I know one?
No. You don't come to it from that kind of
Oh,
position
God, no.
of being a corporate trainer. You come to it from, you know, with your personal experience, and you come to it. You make it very relatable, mental health, and, you know, you and the guys that you come with, and ex-military guys, you make it very relatable.
Well, I hope so. I mean, you've not been on it yet, but I think...
You've already sold both of
yeah,
us.
sorry. Actually, it was more than 250. No, I think, you know... Well, thank you for the compliment. But bear in mind, I've never had a corporate job. You know, I've been running into kneecaps before this, and now I'm in a, you know, scrappy startup mission company that sells great beer. So I don't really do email chains, circling back, in the weeds, all this other stuff that I'm learning what it means, but it's just language that people use. I don't do that stuff. So I'd like to think that we have a bit of a fresh take on it all, that is just a bit more relaxed. And I think that, you know, would like to think I'm a really well-meaning bloke, and, you know, people could reach out to me if they were struggling, and, you know, I'd happily go and listen, have a beer, have a coffee with them, whatever. But I do think that coming from a place of accepting that I don't have all the answers does put people at ease, because, you know, when we first spoke about doing this, I was like, I have some thoughts and you might not like all of them, and I won't be coming with like a 10-step plan to answer it all. But hopefully it's honest and makes people realise that, yeah, you could probably go and pay a L&D company lots and lots of money to do programs and initiatives and stuff within, you know, LTC or pub businesses that are listening. Wouldn't it be more fun if we just let the beer do all the work, and we can have, you know, really meaningful conversations that come from a good place?
Definitely. And I know you said you haven't come from a corporate place, but what you have come from is, you know, being a part of a team. And I can only presume, because I don't play rugby, communication is essential for that. So what you are bringing from that environment, you're taking that and kind of bringing that into, or, like, you know, that's your mission, bringing it into hospitality and teams that work in hospitality.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, the best team meetings we had were 15 minutes long. You know,
Yeah.
we're on an hour's call with somebody. It's, you know, it's tough.
Yeah. It's tough for
because
everyone, right?
Yeah, get to the point. You know, and actually, sorry, I know you're trying to wrap me up, but which is totally fine. But that's a really good example of something that just happens every day. Don't waste people's time.
Yeah.
We're all busy people. We've all got things to do. We all want to do our job. I don't need yoga on a Friday. I need you to just stick to the agenda, get through this stuff. Let's work together collaboratively to get to a really efficient outcome. We all good? Laser focus. Let's get this project over the line. How much more like inspired and, you know, up for it are you if we start meetings, you know, in that format rather than, you know, doing the usual sort of, oh, how's dinner? You know, how'd you get home?
It's
you know,
so true.
God,
though.
the tyre blew out last night. Oh, did it? Gosh. Well, actually, you know, I keep using Steve. I don't know
Poor
who
old
Steve.
Steve.
I don't know who Steve is. Steve used to work for Continental, and they did this and that. Shut up.
Yeah.
You know, let's get focused. Let's get, you know, do what we're doing. And, you know, obviously, you're not telling people to shut up, but it's kind of, you know, there's a really easy thing that people could do to prevent people not feeling like they're getting the best out of their days and using the most of their energy. Let's, respect other people's time, respect other people's energy, so that we can use it on what we need to. We've only got a certain finite amount of time and energy that we can pour into stuff. I want my team to be 10 out of 10 when they're in the pub selling the beer, delivering workshops, talking with, the people that, we're going to make a difference in society. So I'm probably not going to waste their energy talking to them about whether my tyre blew out the other week. It did blow out, just so you know, but that's what came to my mind.
It's probably one of the most difficult subjects that you touched upon today, because it's a cultural thing, isn't it?
Don't you think that's interesting, though? Of all of the things, which I think hopefully proves the point, of everything we've talked about, the thing that you two have got really animated about, not that you weren't about all the other insights I gave you.
Beer tasting, remember that?
Yeah, exactly. 265. The thing that actually has landed with you the most is about, efficiency, being respectful of your time and your energy. Put that in your services. Get that over to them.
It's true, though, but I think, if you are...
Only 2 more tips to go.
Oh, yeah.
We got you.
Yeah. Go on.
It's true, though, but when you think about if you have a team and a team are kind of looking into you, that it is your position where you need to gear people up, you need to lead, and if you're waffling on about stuff that could wait, maybe is completely irrelevant, like put your time and energy into what matters the most for them and you, I think is a really good way of looking at it. And then people will just be happier at work just with that simple approach.
Yeah, well, let's just make sure that nobody's misinterpreting what I'm saying. I'm not saying nobody care about other people's personal lives, nobody talk about that stuff. I'm just saying that we could trim a lot down, and then we can create space for people to get together in a social capacity, because we probably stripped out 20% of our working life that's just nonsense. You know what I mean? So I still stand by it, but maybe that's because I'm not from the real world and I don't intend on going in it anytime soon.
What is the real world? Are we even in it?
I don't know.
Do you agree that everyone within a team plays a crucial role, when it comes to looking at mental well-being, mental health, like taking care of each other?
Short answer, yes. I guess the how is the tricky thing. I think the only thing that you can actually be responsible and accountable for is yourself. You are not responsible and accountable for other people, and you can only help other people if they are willing to help themselves. It's a two-way thing, right? They have to be willing to help themselves. And you talked about the people being financially dependent on you. This happens a lot in the emotional space as you become an emotional crutch or an emotional support for people. And that's an okay transaction to have with somebody, to say, I can help you, but you need to be prepared to help yourself. This isn't a one-way street. This is a two-way street. That's my first thought. And my second thought is, I guess, I don't see this as a top-down or bottom-up or, side-to-side thing. I see it just a little bit more holistically. I think there's things a company can do to put in place good, what they would deem as good behaviours and practices that they want to see in their organisation, and champion those. But I think, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it play the piano, can you? You got to be able to, there's give and take. And that's where I would wager that a lot of well-being days are viewed as a pain, because it's often chucked in for all the right reasons, and that's not me bagging why they're put in, but it's because it's not something that's holistic in the environment. Whereas if you take the I've actually got a really good answer to this. This is great. If you take what we were just talking about earlier on, about being respectful of people's time, energy, emotion, and then we've created space for us to like be ourselves. And I'd love to hear more about your son and like what was it like growing up in Ireland and all that stuff. But then we've got space for it, rather than putting the wellbeing day in when actually we've just wasted a load of time talking about stuff that we didn't need to during the week, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that does carry over into a little bit. I don't actually know if that answers your question now that I'll give you this.
No, it does.
I think that was pretty good answer.
Yeah.
And just to touch upon the people's readiness to accept support, quite often pub companies, HR teams ask us if we would arrange a phone call and reach out to someone who is struggling. And the answer is no. And it's always a bit like, ooh, you don't want to help? Obviously, no one says that, but sometimes I think that it's a bit harsh to say no. But there's a really, really good reason why we say no. And there's a clinical research conducted into, when the psychological interventions are most effective. And it happens when people are ready. Making that phone call is a sign of readiness. 9 out of 10 times when we make a phone call to people, even if we do it at the agreed time and date, there's no answer. And that takes counsellors out of the loop for answering incoming calls from people that are actually ready to talk. So, so that's I think it's a good thing to remember, that it's all great wanting to be there for people and, being open to all those conversations, but it's very much what you said. People have opportunity has to meet readiness, basically.
But I don't know every pub company in the land, but I know a few, and I'd like to think that every person that I've met in those I could go to and speak to, and I don't work in their company. So if I worked in their company, I wouldn't have a problem going, hey, do you mind if I just sound this out with you? And I think that just being a little bit braver sometimes, I guess. But that's, the other side of, there's the recipient is the listener, the person that needs to get it off their chest is, that's where we need to make people psychologically safe. Back to the very start, full circle.
Do you think in some cases, and not in every case, that people will find it easier to reach out to somebody who doesn't know them, who's so far removed from their personal lives, that calling a helpline might be easier than reaching out and speaking to someone that they know?
Statistically, that's the case.
Is
People
it?
are more likely to talk to somebody they don't know than somebody they do know. But sadly, quite often before they take their own lives. There's a great charity doing work in that space. Sorry, LTC, but just to mention, Lions Barber Collective are training barbers to be mental health first aiders, because people are, or lads particularly, are more likely to talk to their barbers than they are their mates when they're really struggling. So I think that's why, I was talking about before, there's the social stuff, but it's so subtle. And, the Ask Better thing I was talking about before, and you listen to those guys, like how they would find out how really bad people are about to do really bad things, or where that stuff's going to be in a certain amount of time. It's so subtle, but they're just experts at listening, and they can just hear a slight change in tone and voice, and can, give a different point of view to be able to get it out of them. And that's the people that we're talking to, let alone the people that you just brush past with, that you got no idea.
To finish our today's conversation, of Greg, if someone was struggling in the hospitality industry today, right now, what would you say to them?
I'm not just saying this because it's LTC podcast or vodcast, what we're doing, but I would say that on balance of everything we've just said and how people are responsible for their own help, make that phone call to LTC. would be one. But I also think that I would encourage them to speak to somebody that they feel like they're comfortable speaking to. For me, it was my childhood best friend who I'd been putting off for months and months and months, and he knew that something was up, was trying to ring me and trying to do things that, you know, we didn't speak on the phone, you know, we never did that. But when he said pint, then we found a way to get me out and have a conversation. So I would say, if you feel like that you need to have a conversation with somebody, go to somebody that you feel safe with, but go to a place that you feel safe with. And quite often in your own home can feel really, really intense and like you're having a big intervention or all the rest of it. So I'd also consider having something to do while you're talking. So go for a walk, you know, grab a drink, alcoholic or not, doesn't really matter. But the point being that make yourself feel as comfortable as possible before you talk to whoever it is.
Brilliant, thank you. And if you don't mind me asking, obviously you don't
Well,
have to.
you said that was the last question.
You don't have
now.
to. You don't have to answer it. I'm
I've
just being professionally curious. I'm not really. I'm just being nosy.
Are they going to bring up a little?
Yeah, we're definitely.
How long did it take you from that first conversation with your friend to when you actually sought professional support around your mental health?
Well, slight correction. I don't sell professional support, so we offer that.
But
to
you
our
did.
customers.
You did mention about therapy. That's
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
so
just for you.
Sorry. So from the conversation with my mate, within a week, I was at a counsellor's.
That's really quick.
I think, yeah, I do think that there is some pretty important context to put behind this. As a professional sportsman, I had a head of medical, a doctor that, you know, I saw the head of medical every day. The doctor, I had his personal mobile number, could, you know, see him at the drop of a hat. Now I'm out in the real world. It's, you know, really quite, it's really disheartening to see how long people have to wait to get a GP appointment, to go and see somebody, and to go and get some help. So I do think that, you know, I'm not sharing that to say, you know, look how great that was. I'm sharing that because I know that I was probably in one of the best, you know, kind of environments that I could have been in, where I had access to, you know, really good healthcare and professionals that aren't at the drop of a hat for lots of people. So I feel incredibly lucky and privileged. Oh, got a little bit emotional there. To have had that opportunity, and I can't wait for the day that People's Captain's in a position where we can plug that gap more to be able to provide that support for people. But I know you guys do a fantastic job, but the Samaritans are always there, and they will answer the phone 24 hours a day for people. So I think, you know, there's a lot of context to all of this stuff, which is difficult because, you know, it's really helpful when people of a profile share their experiences, because hopefully it brings the stigma down and the barrier down. But my experience is not the same as everybody else's experience, just like theirs won't be with yours or whoever else's. So I think context is really, really important, because I would be very surprised if you could get a counselling appointment within a week at the moment through the NHS. Well, just not sure that would happen.
The waiting lists are atrociously long, and that's one of the reasons why we continuously want to push out the LTC helpline, because through our helpline, if you work in the licensed trade, you can get, you know, counselling sessions for you, your family, children, couples, with no waiting list.
With no
and I
waiting
think that's
list.
so
Brilliant.
important.
And that's one of the reasons why we partnered with Relate, because the counselling, we had that as part of our helpline services, that was in place for years, and it's 24/7. But during COVID, we were really taken back with the number of families that struggled with relationships, because of lockdown and being kind of spending loads of time together, and B, how badly children were affected by not going to school and that kind of social isolation. So now we've got couples counselling and children and young people's counselling, and again there's no waiting list. So I'm quite proud of that, actually, that we're able to put that in place. Yeah.
Stitch
No
that
more
up.
No more questions. Thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you for your honesty as well.
No,
and
thank
you for being brave, opening up like that.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the work that you guys are doing. Hopefully there's something that we can do together. Let's make a difference.
Amazing. So if people want to find you, where can they go for more information?
So People's Captain is www.peoplescaptain.co.uk. I am Greg Bateman. I'm on social channels. Don't use all of them as often as I should, but very welcome to come and find me and talk to me anytime.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.